Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Dhammang saranang gacchāmi. Sanghang saranang gacchāmi. Dutiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Dutiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchāmi. Dutiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchāmi. Tisaranang kamanang nititang. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Narada discussion group. The Pali words, Sabbe Dhamma Nalang Abhinivesaya. And again, this phrase is translated in different ways. The word alang often just means enough. The way I read it in the Pali Text Society dictionary, nalang can possibly simply mean like it's a sort of, what's the word, emphatic particle, and it can simply mean not at all. And so all dhammas should not at all abhinivesaya. Abhinivesaya, I've given you a selection of terms on this sheet, ranging from wishing for, tendency towards, inclination and adherence. And if you look at that list, that the wishing for tends towards the desire aspect. And if you take the word adherence, it's more towards the clinging aspect. So you could translate the Buddha's advice as nothing at all should be wished for, or you could say nothing at all should be clung to or be attached to, something like that. It could be that full range. In terms of desire, what we really, I tried to stress the difference between simple desire and ignorant desire. And I said that the Buddha on occasions would be thirsty and he would ask Ananda for water. So it seemed improbable to me that the Buddha was free of all desire. But what the Buddha was free of certainly was ignorant desire. And what I said was this, what we desire often, the ignorant desire is desire for the future, something in the future. And often improbable things like, I wish I didn't have to get old, or I wish I didn't have to get sick, those kind of things, which is based on ignorant desire. Today, and what I said was, the answer to this, the Buddha gave, is that when a monk has heard this lovely reflection, that all things should not be abhinivesaya, or should say wished for now, then when he's heard that, when he regards Vedana in a certain way, yang kinchi Vedanang Vedeti, whether it's pleasant, unpleasant, or neither of those two, he regards this in a certain way. And what I said was that when you've heard that reflection, your mind naturally, the Buddha says, turns towards investigating the present moment. Because if you understand the present moment then fully, then you also understand the future in a very you understand the mechanism, and you understand that there's no possibility of real fundamental change in time. Simply if you understand the present, then you understand the future in a certain way, and that affects your attitude. It affects the desire that you have for the future. And in English, the word, like if you have desire for the future, I said yesterday and repeat today, that the word is hope. And this word hope, I think, might be a suitable term for ignorant desire in a sense, in that it might fit this context. I'd just like to suggest to you that, and you can tell me your ideas today. But if I change that, I hope you've all got pens for this group. This is slightly a study group also. But when that nothing should be hoped for at all. That might be quite an interesting way of examining it. Because if you understand, well, I think, as I understand this sutta, what the Buddha is saying is that if you see the Vedana sensation in the proper way as Dhamma, then this actually dries up hope, simply because you see the truth of the way it is. When you understand the truth of the way it is, then that is the end of tanha. However you translate the word tanha, that's what this sutta is talking about, is the destruction of tanha through insight into the present moment. And in this case, insight into Vedana, regardless of whether it's pleasant, or what I said, pleasing Vedana, it pleasing you, or it displeasing you, or it neither pleases nor displeasing you. You see that Vedana is anicchang. You see the nature of it, anicchang, and it is viraga. Aniccanupassi viharati, abides seeing anicca, come to that translation, abides seeing viraga, abides seeing nirodha, abides seeing patinissaganupassi viharati. Those four aspects. And again, these are not really defined by the Buddha, these words, and they are sometimes defined in the suttas, but my impression is that the Buddha used these words in quite a flexible and open way, and my impression also is that he expected us to use it to be flexible and innovative in our understanding of them. And you can disagree with me if you like, but my impression is that these words have different meanings. And what I said with anicca usually commonly means impermanent. The word nicca is eternal, and then anicca is not eternal. Anicca usually translated as impermanent. And my favored word for that was the word illusion. I thought it was more accurate, actually. The reason being that in this sutta on the right column there, which is the Anguttara Nikaya, volume 4, page 146, the sutta name I don't know, it might be Worthy Persons, but I've got it titled that on this sheet. And in that description of aniccanupassi viharati, the Buddha says that this should be done satatang, continuously, samitang, without a break, abokinang, uninterrupted. So this is uninterrupted seeing of anicca. It's not. So this is. I felt that the word illusion would be something that you could see continuously and without a break, ideally. What I said was that the word impermanence often means kind of comparison, and I felt that was less accurate. Yesterday I said, how would you know that Sri Lanka has changed in the last, say, 10 years? You could only do that by comparing it today as it was 10 years ago. And so could you do that continuously? Could you, as a continuous seeing, would it be a sort of natural for you to continuously compare it to how it was 10 years ago? Or would it be seeing the illusion of sensation, whether it's through any of the six senses? Remember, this is how sensation is through the six senses, and it includes the mind. So it's all thoughts, all memory, all of that's included in sensation. You can have pleasing thoughts, displeasing thoughts, or quite neutral thoughts. And what I said yesterday is that I felt the key for this is not so much seeing sensation, whether it's pleasing or displeasing or not, but to look purely at the illusion, look at all sensation as illusion. It's a slightly different angle. So there's no analysis of sensation or choosing. It's simply seeing this common aspect, and that is the aspect of illusion in sensation. The next term, viraga, commonly translated as dispassion, it possibly can mean fading away, because of the root term of it is raga, often passion or lust, but it also comes from the word rajati, which means dye or stain. So virajati might be fade or something like that. Seems to have two slightly different roots. Sometimes it simply means detachment. Viraga can simply mean detachment, raga. So those it's got, I think, intrinsic flexibility. The word I used yesterday was this term non-fulfillment. And I explained that, and welcome to disagree. I explained it in terms of the senses, and the image I used was that of a cup. I said a cup is something you can fill up with water, and what I said is I felt people generally probably feel that their senses are like cups, and you have to fill them up with water to keep them. You have to feel fulfillment. You go to a show, or you see something, or a lovely person, or something, and in some senses people feel that the idea is then that in the future maybe there'll be a possibility of filling themselves up and getting fulfillment out of the senses. And I explained that that's completely impossible, because the senses, that's not the way they operate. The way the senses actually operate is in terms, and I explained it like a kind of cup. If you turn it upside down and poured water on it, it wouldn't hold any water. I mean, it might hold a couple of drops, but the senses wouldn't hold even a couple of drops, in that our senses don't carry sensation. So what I'm saying is, whatever our sensation from the moment of our birth to the moment of our death, we don't carry any sensation. There's no possibility of filling up the senses. So you can't expect to feel fulfilled through sensation. That's what I'm saying. So whereas people spend often many years of their life trying to feel fulfilled, I was trying in this word viraga, telling you that is simply impossible. And what I said was, if you see that, obviously that is the end of tanha, isn't it? The end of hoping for fulfillment in the future. It will die in you, not through a long meditation or anything, but simply seeing this obvious fact that the senses don't contain sensation, and there's no, you can't hope for fulfillment through the senses. It's not possible. So this would be one aspect of tanha nirodha. Previously I talked about impermanence as illusion. It's the same. If you understand the illusion of sensation, then it's the same in the future. Again, tanha nirodha, simply because that's what you know. You realize sensation is illusion. It always has been, it always will be. It is for me, it is for you, it is for everyone. And then the third term was the word nirodha. It is commonly translated as ending or something like that, nirodha. And it can mean destruction or ending. And the term I used was the word, I think the word nirodha can often seem to imply lack of self, like this lovely teaching the Buddha gave on anatta. Sometimes the word nirodha can mean, and on this list what I've given you is the 5 different terms where occasions where the word nirodha is linked up to 5 different words. Nandi is the word delight or relish. It's a very, it's like the heart of the disease is this word term nandi. And then in this, I give this the Roman page reference number, Samyutta 3:14. Doesn't mean anything to you, I don't think, because your singular Jayanta series doesn't operate like this, but the Roman version does. And this Nandi Nirodha is one aspect of Nirodha, the end of delight. Tanhaya Asesa Viraga Nirodha is the end of tanha, which I've called there wishing, but you could maybe even call that hope. Maybe tanha is simply hope. The end of hope. That sounds dreadful, doesn't it? But actually it might be maybe just the sort of beginning of wisdom is where the hope is destroyed. Identity, Sakaya Nirodha, is on that reference there, S5:410. Bhava Nirodha, very important concept. It's equivalent to Nibbana, Bhava Nirodha Nibbanang. That's the word term Nirodha used in a different context there. And then fifthly, Papancha Nirodha. The end of papancha, I think, might mean imagining. And so I'm just showing that the word nirodha can mean all those different things. And the term I used was this word meaning. And what I said was that if you look at any individual thing, no individual thing in itself has any meaning. If you take the human body, it arises and ceases. And it only has purpose or meaning in relation to something else. Anything we do or say or whatever has meaning only in relation to something else, and hopefully we can talk about that and you can tell me your solutions to this, and there are other ways of considering that. And the final term the Buddha gave, this is to succor the king of the gods, a brief conversation. He says that when a monk has heard that all things should not be hoped for, then the monk abides seeing sensation, seeing patinisaga, which can range in meaning from abandonment to rejection. And I think yesterday I said the word abandonment would be a good word, in that every intrinsic to sensation is abandonment of it. I said abandonment is just intrinsic to conversation. Like, how could you begin a sentence? How could you finish a sentence if you haven't stopped beginning it, if you understand? Any conversation, there's ending intrinsic to any word. To get to the end of the word, the beginning of the word has to end, obviously. To get to the end of the day, the beginning of the day has to end. To get to, any aspect of sensation you consider, abandonment is intrinsic to it. And so it seems that the Buddha's suggesting that the monk abides in this, it's like a kind of meditation, isn't it? It's a meditation on abandonment. It's not looking at any individual thing abandoning, but the general principle of abandonment. So that's the fourth reflection. Hopefully we can cover that again. Now, obviously, if you see these things, then the monk does not cling to anything in the world. Upadna kinchi loke upadiyati. When he does not cling, he is not, and I've used the word concerned, paritasati. Sometimes you might say worry, but I thought concern was slightly more helpful. Not concerned through not clinging. When not concerned, he personally attains nibbana. Pachatanyewa parinibbayati. And obviously that takes the usual ending to that, but he understands birth is destroyed. The holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done, and there is no more coming into any state of being. So that's my brief synopsis of the sutta. It's true that the Buddha doesn't give much of a suggestion. What he says is that the monk abides anicca nupassi viharati, simply abides seeing illusion, say. And like at yesterday's meeting, I think it's like we get slightly blocked by our assumptions. We get sort of bound by our habits of perception. And this is a kind of, it's like it's a sort of blindness and a very, like the assumption of the meeting. I said how usually in these kind of meetings there's a sort of feeling of reality, like I'm really sitting here and you're really sitting there. And it's got a sort of feeling of really something substantial, like, unquestionable about it. I mean, you really feel you're sitting there, and you really feel I'm sitting here. And yet, like if you look back at that meeting, when at that time I said, when you look back, you could even wonder, did that meeting ever really happen? Did it ever really happen? The sense of illusion maybe is more apparent when you look back. Did it happen? Did last year really, or my childhood, did that really, like in those terms of illusion? And, what blocks our sense of anicca is just the certainty and maybe the habit of perception. We can't even see illusion. I mean, in theory, you can. In theory, I said, like how mysterious time is. Like if you look at the present moment, what's the length span of the present moment? How long does it last? I mean, does it, because in theory, it would have to last some time, wouldn't it, in theory? Like if I said the present moment, does it last as long as I flick? Because if it doesn't last any time at all, then you would think it wouldn't exist, would you? If I said, how long did the show last? It didn't last any time, no time at all. You'd say, well, therefore there was no show. Wouldn't you? You'd have to say that if the show didn't last any time, it didn't exist, in theory. But how mysterious it is when you look at things, actually, that if you divide time, you can always divide it. If you take an hour, you have an hour in the past, an hour in the future. That seems nothing in between. Okay, well, how about a second? You divide a second, and half a second in the future, half a second in the past. Well, that leaves nothing in between. Well, dear, oh dear. And you can keep doing that, however small length of time. What you find is the present moment seems to last no time at all. In fact, it doesn't last any time. That's how mysterious it is. So you begin to wonder, well, does the present moment exist or not? Because in theory, it seems not to exist. but in practice it only seems to exist. So you're sort of caught in this mystery of how on earth does it exist if it can't exist. So this is what I'm saying, is that sensation, then you'll use the word illusion. It seems quite an accurate thing, because that seems actually what it is. It's like what's existing should not exist. It should not be capable of existing. It's on those terms. So I felt the word illusion. Now what I felt with this reflection would be can you abide seeing illusion as illusion? Or maybe I think one way to start would be to examine your sense of certainty that this actually does exist. Look at that sense. Begin where you are, which is that you really feel sensation exists. Your visual sensation, auditory, you go through the senses, your thoughts. You really think, or most of us often do simply by habit, see things in they're very real terms. They're very real, solid, real objects. Like often Buddha statues seem very real. Some of them are made of very heavy metal. Like it seems like rock. Something like rock seems very stable. So why don't we start by considering the reality of things? Look and see how real do you think things are actually? Your sensation, do you feel sensation is real? And I think that's maybe the entrance point, is to see what you actually think, what the sense of reality, and then slowly maybe begin to question it. How would that do? Is that a good answer or not? This is nice again, because I'm managing to dominate the whole discussion again. Whereas, the purpose is obviously to try and encourage you also to participate. What I'm saying is slightly different. What I'm saying is, I'm just getting us to look at this sense of being sure. I'm not saying everything's uncertain, which would be another opinion, just a view, but that's fine. The problem with opinions, it's more in terms of letting go. So let's look at what's sure. What is it? Because I think that might be it. And then maybe, what you're saying is true. I'm just taking a slightly different angle. The sense of sure. Are you really sure? How sure are you? Ajahn Chah, in a sense you're right. Ajahn Chah's favorite reflection in Thai was this word mai nair, not sure, not sure, not sure. This was his path of practice, was using this statement. That was his path. Maybe, it's the same idea, I suppose. It's just to look at certainty, uncertainty. Look at those two, certainty and uncertainty. And then, looking, could you think that you could somehow change uncertainty? Could you do something, some way of making it certain? You see, because what I probably feel is that humans actually do realize this sense of uncertainty. There's this continuous change. It's like you're trying to walk on shifting sand. Now, obviously that upsets the psychology. It must upset humans at some deep level. You might refuse to acknowledge it, but if the things that people are suddenly dying and all things are sort of in movement and change, that's going to have a very profound effect on consciousness, whether you acknowledge it or not. And so, that leads on to this term that the Buddha used, was the word paritasati, is concern. At the end of that, bottom of that sheet, this sense of concern and worry, which must be there in all humans' mind, whether they acknowledge it or not. And it must also affect their behavior, often looking for wealth or insurance or property or some way of overcoming this dire sense that something dreadful is happening and wanting to shore it up, just to overcome a psychological problem. Whereas the Buddha is saying that's not the way to safety. This is one of the key goals of Buddhism, is to find, it's at the top of the sheet, absolute safety. This is what humans assert. The achanta is the absolute yoga kema. That's what humans want, And the Buddha is saying the way through this is through this practice of seeing the impermanent, seeing illusion. And then safety, strange to say, is found through seeing the truth of this and through the tanha nirodha. That's actually where safety comes from. Strange to say, that's the Buddha's path. Very different from the worldly attitude. On those points, that's true. One can always argue those, and that's an opinion. But what's the way out of this, do you think? Because, people have different opinions. I'm trying to evade that whole thing by just talking about illusion. And, in terms of theory, like I said, like whatever length span you take, you can always divide it. I mean, maybe you're saying maybe when it gets small enough, you can't divide it. Well, I'm not going to argue with that. But you're right in a sense that the Buddha used this term present, moment. That's true. And that's used here too. I think maybe one of the key aspects of this is that what happens in humans is that they divide two things. They say the present moment is impermanent. There's a sort of division. There's two things. There's the present moment and there's impermanent. Now, what I said yesterday might be much more useful is not to use a noun and adjective. The present moment and noun phrase, impermanent, is an adjective. And I said, why don't you use two nouns, the present, and talk instead about impermanence, a permanence. The present moment is an expression or is impermanent. So there's no division. Impermanence is the present moment and the present moment is impermanence. This is maybe hard to follow immediately, but I'm trying to... I'm trying to avoid people splitting, but two things. If you say this paper is impermanent, which is true, but it tends towards thought again. How long does it last and all of that? But if you said it's impermanence and no separation, I think maybe one way is just to start where you're at and to instead of looking for impermanence, why don't you look for permanence? Because that's what we believe in. That's where the examination should begin. I mean, rather than trying to agree with everything the Buddha said, which would come out from faith, no, we want to say, well, what do I actually believe in permanence? Okay, now look, start from there. So use permanence as your objective. Seek for permanence, and that's our belief. Somewhere, something permanent. You should try and find it, because that's the way to learn. Well, you look. That's what you believe in. It's like you have to try and disprove the Buddha. That's what you're trying to do. I challenge you to do it, because then you'll really have experience. Challenge the Buddha, think the Buddha might be wrong here, now go and look. Because that's the fact, that's what humans are thinking. We're thinking the Buddha, maybe he's wrong. Okay, now look, go and look for it. What I'm trying to say slightly is like usually you start this with the breath, you say the breath, it goes in and out. It starts impermanent, out, begin, end, like that. That's impermanent, isn't it? And that's a very good way to begin. And on those like simple ways, and then you can kind of expand that insight. It's not just the breath that's impermanent. The day and the night, that's impermanent. Today, where's it gone? It was daylight out there. Just half an hour ago there was daylight, and it was daylight for all that. Now it's utterly gone. How incredible. And that can become a very powerful meditation, the reflection on day and night. Day and night. Everything, not just the daylight that's gone, but everything that happened during the daylight. All the conversations you had, all the worries and thoughts, that's also part of the day. That was part of the day. All the postures of your body, now you're sitting. Now where's all the standing, the walking gone? Gone. So this is another very common reflection on the postures. Where is the standing gone? Where is it gone? This is gradually dawning of illusion. What is illusion? This whole thing. What I'm saying, the insight, and maybe you can't quite follow this, and I'm, work on this. I'm not claiming that I've sort of attained this, but I'm just trying to say that where I think this insight leads to is the contemplation of things. Like you might say, this pen is impermanent, and again you've separated the pen from impermanence. You're saying there's two things, but if how could you say this? The problem is the way thought thinks. It often thinks in terms of things. You say things are impermanent, where the idea things includes the concept of permanence, strange to say. If you say something, you're saying it's some kind of permanence. And then you're saying something permanent is impermanent, you see. That's the trouble in the mind. You're trying to say something, that a pen, which is permanent, is impermanent. You know, so it creates a complication. Why? Because of dividing. But if I said the pen is impermanence, there's no separation. That actually is, it's not a thing in the same way. It actually just is impermanence. And this is something you can actually see. I mean, like usually with a breath, you see it begins and ends. But what are you going to do with a pen that's not moving? How are you, like, if you're going to see this continuously without break and uninterrupted, how do you see something like a pen? How do you see impermanence in it? How do you do that? How are you going to do this? Because do you have to wait for it to break, or you wait for it to break, put it in the fire?
No, you can break it.
You can break it. But what if I don't break it? Well, you can think about it. But then you're thinking in terms of atoms. And then my next question, are atoms impermanent? Because scientists even think that certain aspects are permanent. I think they think certain parts of the atom are permanent. Now you're arguing with a scientist. But my question is, can you see this without resorting to microscopes, electron microscopes? That's my question. Or any kind of mathematics. What do you think? Can you see a pen? Can you see it continuously as impermanent? If you were to see something as continuously impermanent, how would you do it? No, you look at it. You have to look at it. For the first time, it's like, look at it. That's how you are going to learn. You're going to say, like, I'm going to look. The Buddha said you had to look, now I'm going to look. Is that? Can I see this? Well, you say that, but you've just blocked yourself. You have to be willing to look and see, maybe the Buddha is wrong. But you have to be willing to look. Like, to give it a fair judge, to judge someone, you have to listen, right, to both, and just look and judge. Tell me, can you see impermanence in something like a pen or a table, something like that? This cassette, this lovely cassette, tell me. No, but this is a practice, you see. It's not like knowledge. Oh yes, last week I saw it. But you know, this is the practice of continuous, without a break, anupassi, see. It's not like even think, oh yes, it's impermanent. I know one day it will break, it's impermanent as an idea. But because I'm saying that's not solid enough. I think what would affect me very strongly is if I actually saw this, actually with my eyes. That's my challenge to you, is to see impermanence. Now, what do you think? Do you think, because the Buddha seems to be saying that you can actually see it. You just have to look just give it a try, a new time. It's like a miracle. You're looking for a miracle. It seems, well, I've lived a long time, I've seen a lot of things, and this is nonsense. But now I'm saying maybe it's not nonsense. But I think it's the same. I think when you see, that's the same as realize. When you see him, if you actually saw this as impermanence, that would be the same as realization, wouldn't it? Could you see this? See, what you would have to do is you'd have to put your attention, sustained attention on it. And as you put your sustained attention on it, like you could, what people find easy to see as impermanence is something that's obviously changing, like my voice. Every word, if you followed every word, it would come out, you'd realize it's changing. It's inevitable. When in speech, there has to be cessation, impermanence. Otherwise, it would come out, it would just have to be permanent sound. There'd be no possibility, no communication possible, because no cessation. So there is cessation in something changing. That's easy. The day, the night, that's changing. The breath, that's changing. But what I'm saying is where this surely needs to be expanded to something not apparently changing. Not apparently changing. So something, because that's where we get stuck. Like the body, now it's permanent. See, it's not moving. Oh, the heart's pumping. Stop pumping, heart. Okay. Not breathing. I'm permanent. I'm permanent. Solid objects seem like permanent, don't they? This is utter. This is myself. This is permanent, unchanging, is it? Or is it changing after all? Because that's the challenge, isn't it? To see something apparently solid, actually not illusion. Illusion, you see. It's learning to see through things. And then when you do it, when you've done that, then the purpose is to expand that, keep practicing that seeing of illusion, seeing through the solidity of it, seeing through the solidity, you see. But this you have to do through attention, sustained attention. Watch, look, sustained. And then as you sustain it, you realize it's always in the present, that tape, always. Incredible. That's incredible. You see, it doesn't go into the past. You would think it would go into the past somehow, but it's always there, isn't it? It's always there. That's incredible. Isn't it? It's always there. But then you could do, but you want to look, but then what you're saying is something is not changing. And that's how interesting. And that's the problem, is that we think, yes, okay, some things change and some things really don't change.
Gradually, that also changes.
Gradually?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm safe. For now, I'm safe. So that's my security, is something that looks solid. Phew, at last, I found it. Achanta Yoga Kema, this, unchanging. I'm safe. Or am I not safe? So it's in danger, isn't it? It's part of danger, that. So it's continuously in danger, that tape. Now, that's one insight we've agreed on. It's continuously in danger. It could get trampled any second. That's a bit closer. So it's continuously deteriorating. You know, the practice is looking at objects that you think aren't changing. I think that's what might be an interesting, it sounds almost waste of time, but maybe it's not. Maybe this is where each of us is stuck, is we actually think some things aren't illusion. What's illusion? Illusion is like tissue paper. You just put your hand through it. It's like nothing. But maybe everything is nothing. Maybe that's the nature of everything. It's like, maybe it's all made of tissue paper. After all, illusion. Maybe it's just illusion. I think it's the same, really. Like what you're saying is that, that we make kamma, what we do. We drink or make a cup of tea or whatever. That's all kamma. Kusala kamma, akusala kamma. It's all, it's interacting with the material around us. But I still think that you can do that even if you see it's illusion. It makes no difference. I mean, you do it because it's kusala. You do what's kusala, or you do it because it's necessary, or because it's good. You are thirsty, you drink water, obviously. But the water, if you see water is illusion or you see it's not illusion, I mean, you drink water because that's kusala. So that's the object that's what life's about, making kamma and developing the panya. Because whether you drink or you don't drink, that's still kamma. Whether you drink, that's illusion. If you don't drink, that's illusion. So I don't see that your way is any different from mine. You say if it's all illusion, you don't drink. That's fine, don't drink. But that not drinking is also illusion. You can just sit there. I'm not going to drink because it's illusion. Well, that is also illusion. Sitting there doing nothing is also illusion. Or you get up, you go to the tap and get some water. That's illusion. But it doesn't. You see, you're dismissing it. But I think I see what you're doing. I mean, in a sense, what the Buddha is saying is the purpose or the outcome of seeing illusion is this na upadiyati, not grasping. That's the result of it. But not grasping doesn't mean you're powerless of all action, because that also would be illusion. And as we saw, the Buddha was very active in a skillful way in the word. He could see the illusion, but he was interacting. He wasn't saying Ananda is anatta, therefore I don't need to help him. He's just like, no difference between Ananda and a rock. He's just, a rock is not self. I could sit on him or anything I like, simply because it's anatta. But it's not. That's not it. It's sort of. I think it makes no difference, actually. In fact, the difference it makes in seeing illusion is that you act without greed, hatred, and delusion, and therefore your action is inevitably kusala, because it's done free of greed, hatred, and delusion. So your action becomes more skillful, more beneficial, less completely harmless because of seeing, because of wisdom. It's based on wisdom. Whereas if I see things as solid and real, then there becomes this worry, concern, and all kinds of various unskillful things also creeping in. People translate, it's a great word actually, it's like a great puzzle in the English. Translators have a great time translating it. Yoni means womb, yoni so manasikara. I think it means, for me it means something careful consideration, something like that. So people use different careful, but consider carefully. That's very intrinsic to sati, attentiveness. It's to do with that same attitude, to careful. And that's what, to see something, that's what you need, to see something that you've never seen before, because that's what we're doing. You know, the Buddha talks about a monk going where he's never before gone. This incredible journey that we're each attempting, like in all the eons of time and birth, and you know, think of the countless lives and all of that, and now we're going somewhere where we've never before gone. How incredible. And we're making this jump through yoniso manasikara. It's through this attentiveness, careful consideration. That's where it begins. Then you get the development of panya comes from that, and from that this lovely upadhyati, whatever it is, kinchi loki upadhyati, seeing the way, seeing the truth, seeing the illusion, means tanha, finish the end of tanha, because you see you can't grasp an illusion. You can't grasp it, so you don't grasp it. It's not like training yourself. It's not like physiotherapy where you train someone not to grasp or something, a little bit less grasping each day. But if you saw illusion, if you genuinely saw this, I think it would affect your behavior. Inevitably, you wouldn't grasp it. It would be as foolish to do that as try and catch a rainbow, wouldn't it? You know, it's on that level to see illusion. It would definitely affect your behavior. It's a sort of psychological behavior, though. The physical behavior is still because the body's illusion. It's all illusion, but that's the correct insight. Like what we're talking about here is a very high-level Dhamma, and it's one aspect. And I think it would be a mistake to think that's all there is to Buddhism, because it's not. I mean, it's the Eightfold Path. So it's a kind of the whole practice, and you know, it's a lot. Like to have a mind that's so pure and so peaceful and calm and insightful, to see something, it's easy to say, but to actually do that, I think you need the right situation. I mean, in actual practice, you do the best you can, because you've got the situation you can. Like if I said to you, you've got to go to the root of a tree or forest, what good is that going to be to you? And that's unrealistic. But I say you just do the best you can. Listen to the Buddha's teaching, so many different aspects to his advice, so many different ways of looking, like answering your question. I think humans think that you can somehow just do this. You just look at that and then that's it. That's very bit hopeful, actually. But you can try. You try that. And in general, I recommend good friendship, kalyana mitta. Getting good influences and listening to, getting good, very big effect. If you have akusala mitta, papa mitta, that's going to damage you in a strange and subtle way. You listen to bad advice, people telling you all kinds of, wrong suggestions, really. Kalyana mitta, solitude is very common recommendation, the Buddha. Keeping precepts, all of that does affect the way your mind works, actually. All of these affect it. And the better you practice, the mind's in a better state. You develop samadhi. That's a very key aspect. Samadhi is where your mind's very pure and calm. And it's those states, that's where it becomes very insightful, because your mind's not doing this. I mean, it's like what we're trying to do in the middle of Colombo is quite almost maybe impossible. I don't know. But I don't want to say it's impossible, because that would block you. I don't want to say I'm just saying, yes, okay, it's difficult, but don't just try. I'm not going to say it. Maybe it's possible. Maybe it is possible. I'd prefer to leave it like that. But if you feel it's impossible, that's fine. But do what you can. Just at least keep the precepts. But if you get an opportunity to have a different situation for a day or two, then do that. Partly has just been interested in it. Like coming to these discussions will fire your interest, and it makes you curious. That's really incredible. If I can make you curious, that's very, very helpful. And you might do it. Like you might be able in a quiet moment see this. So like just reflect on, just put your attention on something, on a cup, and see if you can see the illusion of it. See if you can do that. Take a cup, look and look and look and look and look, and see, can you see the illusion in a cup? That would be wonderful, you see. So I think you should just keep trying until it just look and look and look, see if you can see something. And that's the secret, is to see it. The Buddha uses this word kayi kayanupasiviharati, see the body in the body, in the Anapanasati Sutta. So I mean, for me, it's only guesswork, and I'm not going to claim anything, but just for discussion purposes and for meditation and contemplation, I kind of equate the word lack of meaning to apanihito. Well, Nirodha some. Yes, that's true. It's true that he used the word Nirodha in that phrase. But in in the Buddha's description of Nirodha, actually, they asked him this question: Nirodha ti vuchati, king, whatever it is. Nirodha is said. What is Nirodha? And the Buddha said, Nirodha is where the khandhas cease, where the khandhas Nirodha, where the rupa Nirodha, Vedana Sanya, where that Nirodha. So, but that, what does that actually mean, do you think? Because if you say the end of the breath, that's the end of the breath, the breathe out, that's the end of it. But my thing is that you breathe in, then you breathe out. I don't know that you can say, you could say that. I mean, I can't say you're wrong, but my feeling is that Nirodha, in that sense, could actually mean arahantship. Because it's only the arahant, actually, where body actually ceases and no further re-arising. Because for the rest of us, there's not truly, it's not asesa viraga nirodha. It's not complete nirodha. It's just nirodha and then further arising. So, and I can't say, but it does have different meanings. And for you, what your comment was if something, but let's take your view. Your view is if something ceases, that is, you're saying that was what meaningless means. Because something's impermanent, it's meaningless. Well, it is, the word is used on this list here. I gave the word Nandi Nirodha, which is a very, very exalted state. Well, I think it can be used in different ways. I think the word Nirodha, and I think maybe one way might be the end of Sakaya Ditti, like where me and mine ceases. This last, the Achivacha Gota Sutta, that very last one, and in fact the word is used there with the destruction, kaya, viraga, nirodha, chaga, patinisaga of sabba manyitang, sabba matitang, sabba ahinkara maminkara manusayang. With the end of all that, the Tathagata is liberated through not clinging. So the word nirodha is used in terms of that presumption of a me. That's what I think I'm saying, is it occurs in a list. In fact, it occurs in slightly different types of lists. Sometimes it occurs with nibbana. Sometimes I think it occurs with nibbida even. You get a slightly different list and you get these words occurring. And if you look at the lists, they obviously have slightly different meanings. They're not exactly the same. And it's frustrating to do this, actually, I confess. Like this word nirodha, I did some research on it. And that's part of my research, that list, to the extent that I actually began to think that the thing the Buddha was aiming at was not, he did not intend to make a dogmatic statement about it. What he was doing was giving a kind of broad hint at something. And I know people would like to be dogmatic about it, but I don't think that was his intention. Well, I think there's a flex. My impression is when monks get together, sometimes in the suttas, they'd get together and they would ask a question, they would all have different answers. They go to the Buddha and they would say, well, which one spoke well? Where they're saying which one's right, which one's wrong. And the Buddha said, no, that's all of you spoke well. And he was very generous. And then he would give his own answer. So he was much more flexible. He wasn't dogmatic. He would say, nope, that's Sariputta, that's the good one, that's the answer. And the rest of you, it wasn't like that. And and if you think like explaining a puzzle from the Sutta Nipata, how would you explain that puzzle? And they would say, this way or that way. That's how incredible. The Buddha's given this verse and it's got different explanations. And the Buddha said they're all good. Now what can you say? How can you be dogmatic in the face of that? Explaining a verse from the Sutta Nipata, you can do it in different ways. If you can do that, maybe you can explain Nirodha in different ways. I would have thought. And justify it in what terms? Justify it in terms of whether it's kusala? Akusala? Does it have good result, bad result? What's the word? Sukudriang. Is it Sukudriang or Dukudriang? What do you think? But I admit, and I don't want you to accept my words at all. But I'd like you to find your answer to it. I think that's fair enough, and that's the value of these discussions. I mean, my sort of fear, if you like, is dominating you in any way, which I don't want to do, and it's not fair and it's not useful to you even. But I can certainly provoke you. That's it. And if I can get you to argue with me, that's good too, because at least we're engaged with the problem. Like even if, it's not the ideal, but even if these sessions ended in argument, at least you would have had a discussion. And at least you'd go away and think about it. And that's the point. Like these discussions are just the beginning. It's not yesterday we had the talk, now we have the discussion, and then tomorrow we have the practice. But you have to do that yourself. But I think if we had a little argument today, that might help. Well, I'm going to show him what Nirodha is. And then you might look up the suttas or you might do something. But you would be research it. And you wouldn't rest content until you found it. If you didn't get it this week, you'll get it next week. And it will stay in your mind like a bee in your bonnet. And it did for me too, actually, when I was researching this. I wanted to get the best answer. I really wanted, this week, in fact, this sheet, because this has been hanging in my mind for several years, this list of anicca, viraga, nirodha, patinissaga. This is research I knew I wanted to do, but I didn't want to do it today. But then finally, when I was giving this talk, I thought, I have to do it. Now, I was kept putting it off, so I did it. And this was the result of it. There's no clear answers. There's no clear answers in the text.
Can I ask, I think it's a foolish question, but can I ask something? I think limited by the words themselves to understand this.
I don't think the words. I think we're limited. Sometimes what happens is people make confident statements. Certain teachers or the commentaries make certain confident statements and they sound so confident that we think they must be right, and anyone who says anything different must be wrong, because I think when you listen to the Buddha, you want to get it exactly right, and there's a sort of, did I hear that exactly right, did I get the meaning right, and all of that, and that sense of insecurity, you're grasping for some dogmatic position, and it can be. But I challenge you to look. But I think my conclusion is, maybe the Buddha was not making a dogmatic statement at all. Because the word nirodha is, it's used in this phrase nirodha samapati. It's like such an exalted state. Like, have you had, and I even hear meditators asking each other, have you had an experience of nirodha? I say, when I had my nirodha experience last year, it changed my life. And you think, what did it do? What happened? And I think, I don't know on meditation, sometimes I suppose maybe things go blank and you think, that's it, I had it. Phew, that's great, now notch that up, another victory. But I don't think it's that. I don't see that in the scriptures. Admittedly, they use that phrase in Nirodha Samapati, which is the most exalted meditation experience. It's like where it's the end of Vedana and Sanya, when those final two khandhas, Nirodha, and you go into this incredible, exalted state and you come out an arahant. I mean, it leads straight on, automatically, in every situation, every reference, that leads straight to arahantship. And it's usually after the Neva Sanya Na Sanya Yatana, the very highest samadhi state. Then you go into Nirodha and you think, wow, that's what I want. Try very hard, like that. It sounds very exalted, the word Nirodha, but the word Nirodha is used in other ways too, actually. And in much more ordinary ways, even dukkha nirodha is used for sotapannas. It's not like just arahants even just have dukkha nirodha. Dukkha nirodha is for, it's not so, see, if it was exalted, what use would it be to you? If I say to you, well, you've got to find out about nirodha, I'm saying to you, you've got to be an arahant. I may as well just say you've got to be an arahant. It's no good to you, is it? And you say, well, how do I become an arahant? It's like saying, how can I get a nirodha experience? And, well, you've got to get a nirodha experience, you've just got to have a nirodha experience. To be an arahant, you've just got to be an arahant. Well, thanks a lot. You say, if you want to get to the top of the ladder, put your foot on the top rung. You say, what about the other rungs? Well, we've taken them all out. There aren't any other rungs. It's just the top rung. And we're calling it nibbana, but we also call it nirodha. Well, thanks. That makes it a lot easier. But if nirodha nupassi is a practice that you can do, then it becomes each of the rungs in a way. It becomes something that is sort of much more, that I think that you can use in different ways, actually. And I don't think there is something just called nirodha. I don't think there is. Is there? Or is there? In some ways, yes, there is. There's that definition I just gave you. But that seems to be arahantship. Is it? If I say the end rupa nirodha, I can't remember the exact phrase. Sotapanna is defined in many different ways, actually. There are many. Well, I think the Sotapanna has realized dukkha nirodha. I think that's one of his insights. It's one of his. I think it's one of his. I mean, it might even, for all I know, it might be even lower than a Sotapanna. That might be. But I think there is actual. What I'm saying is there's an actual scriptural reference. That's what I'm saying, where Sotapanna and the realization of that. So it's not just limited to arahants, because sometimes people say dukkha nirodha is nibbana, and I don't think even in the scriptures that's the case. So it's flexible. Dukkha nirodha is a rung on the ladder, and it's something that's easily within your reach. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to look at this in a flexible way, and and in the course of researching stuff, it's quite good. Like the word nirodha is used in different ways. It's used as destruction, say. And we could do the same thing, and I'm hoping, these groups, you can come up with words. But let's take the word destruction. Let's take that. Nirodhanupassi viharati, abide seeing destruction. Is that something you can do? Yes, but can you do it? That's it. Usually when you destroy something, like if I destroy this pen, there's always something left, isn't there? It goes into vapor or something. That's a sort of material, but Dhamma destruction is total. It doesn't leave a trace. There's not even, that's what's so devastating. Like, what about that meeting at Dhammaravi? Where's it gone to? That is utterly gone, isn't it? That is, and you can capture it on camera, but the actual thing, like the past, where is today? And this pen, even if you looked at that as a continuity, arising and ceasing, you can see how complete nirodha is. Like if there was trace left, you couldn't have a conversation with someone, would you? It would come out as gobbledygook. If there was a sort of, you said a word and then there was a sort of trace of the previous word, you say, could you say that again, please? You got mixed up with the previous word. It didn't quite cease. But actual fact, things do cease utterly. And that's how you can change your eye like that. Like if it maintained an image, I'd see that window over there. I'd say, well, it didn't cease. But its cessation is complete. Dhamma destruction, it ceases without a remnant. And we take it for granted. We're in this sort of midst of this mass destruction, which the Dhamma destruction, this is mass destruction. This is it. But we think, oh, there's no destruction, nothing going on, it's all normal. Yeah, I got up this morning and I'll get up tomorrow and it's all. And that's the self, the me. Me, I'm not destroyed. I'm the same person, you see. But get a new passport soon. But I think that if you saw this, it would be shaking, wouldn't it? Like to see destruction, to train yourself to see destruction in the present moment would be shocking, shaking. But it would be also a good use of the word nirodha. It's like a flexibility in the term. So now my question is, give me another word for nirodha. You've got two words now, two possibilities. Let me have another word for it. Actually, I've heard that explanation, but I find it, the problem with that is you may as well just have three noble truths then. If the third noble truth is Nibbana, why you've really just got three noble truths and Nibbana, that's it. Seems to me. But if for actual practical use, if the thing's going to be of any use, then it's something that's four noble truths. And that's for all. Talk about the Buddha taught the four noble truths, and then when he taught it, they became sotapannas. Dukkha nirodha is tanha nirodha. That's it, isn't it? Yayang tan yotassa yewa tanhaya sesa viraga nirodha. That's what dukkha nirodha is the end of tanha. Dukkha nirodha is tanha nirodha. So now what's your next question is, what's tanha nirodha, is it?
If there's tanha nirodha, then you reach Nibbana.
Well, but I don't know that you have. I mean, you could argue. I'm not sure that this is the right way, but when the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths to people, then he would wait till their mind was pure and clean, then he'd teach the Four Noble Truths, and then they became sotapannas. That's common, so common in this. They don't become arahants, they become sotapannas. That's quite over and over again. The Four Noble Truths, that's even the first sermon. That's what it's about. The Kassapa becomes a sotapanna. He doesn't become an arahant. It's only on the second sermon they all become arahants. Those models are very interesting, and sometimes suttas say one thing somewhere and they say something else somewhere else, and that's quite interesting to know. And it would be interesting for you. It's just interesting to get that model straight, whether sotapannas can make a mess or not. Yeah, the truth is that sotapannas, if they make an error, they're incapable of hiding it. That's the If they make an error, they're incapable of hiding it, which means they're capable of making an error, but they're incapable of hiding it. Well, if they've slaughtered their parents, they don't become sotapannas. Like Ajatasattu had after the Samanyapala Sutta, he had a lot of faith in the Buddha, but he was not a sotapanna. He can't be a sotapanna. He couldn't realize it. He'd committed this terrible atrocity. But if he had realized sotapanna, he would be incapable of killing his parents. Sotapannas are incapable of committing the great crimes, those extreme ones. But lesser wrongdoings, they're incapable of hiding them. So, well, that was a nice session. Thank you very much. Bhavantu sabba mangalang rakantu sabba devada sabba buddha nubhavena saddasoti bhavantu day. Bhavantu sabba mangalang rakantu sabba devada sabba dhamma nubhavena saddasoti bhavantu day. Bhavantu sabba mangalang rakantu sabba devada Sabba Sangha Nubhavena Sada Soti Bhavantu Day.